Hey, how y'all doing? Welcome to the first episode of the Bulletproof Garage. I am Scott Walters and I'm your host, and right here behind me is our first project vehicle. It is a 1987 Ford F350. It is a crew cab long bed diesel dually. I know that's a mouthful. And this thing's about 40 feet long, and when we're done with it, it's going to be about 4 tons of fun. But right now it's not running or driving, and it's been off the road for quite some time. So we've got our work cut out for us. Now the plan is to get it running, driving, and towing again, and hopefully on a budget. Now, right now there's just a minor problem. The engine is said to be seized. Did I mention we were going to do this on a budget? I don't know why I do this to myself. All right, folks, sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride here in the Bulletproof Garage. All right, folks, let's do a quick walk around and see what we've got to work with here. Okay, this is an 87, so this is the first year of what's called the brick nose body style. That went from 87 to 1991. And as you can see, it is a custom. We'll talk more about that later. And the body is pretty solid, but it's going to need a cab corner, at least on the driver's side. It's going to need a little bit of metal work, but the truck is surprisingly solid overall. You can see the rear bumper is tweaked, no big deal. And, you know, I said custom. Boy, that tailgate, that is full custom, folks. All right, now, the bed actually looks pretty good. Looks like they were using it to pull a gooseneck trailer, which is common for one of these vehicles. That's what they were built for, right? Passenger side, you got some dings and dents, but overall, it is a solid basis for a project vehicle. Looking under the hood here, it looks fairly good. It's complete, but somebody's obviously been doing some work. Again, this is an 87, so it's got the 6.9 liter diesel. This is the last year for the 6.9, and this is the IDI diesel, the indirect injection diesel, not a Power Stroke. And this is a vehicle I've been looking for a while because I'm a little bit tired of Power Strokes because there's just a lot to go wrong on a Power Stroke. Now, these things are simple, parts are easy to find for them, and they're easy to work on, all right? The downside is they just don't make a lot of power. I want to say this thing was rated at about 360 foot-pounds of torque, and that is not much. Especially when you consider that this vehicle weighs close to 4 tons and is commonly towing, 10,000 pounds plus behind it. But again, I think we have a lot of potential here, and I'm looking forward to getting this engine started and running and getting this thing back on the road. Okay, checking out the interior. Remember I said it's a custom. Well, here's what that means. You've got manual windows and you've got manual locks. I love that. I tell you what, that is less stuff to go wrong, less electrical stuff to troubleshoot. You also don't have any carpet, you just got a rubber floor mat. Another thing that you can see here, it's got a 5-speed manual transmission. So 87 was the last year for the 6.9 liter diesel, and it was also the first year for the ZF5 transmission. That is a great transmission for towing. Okay, moving back here. Okay, let's see what we've got. I see some, I see some injectors and some glow plugs. I see a rear gas tank here that's obviously seen better days. Those are the gas tank straps right here. And, well, let's see what else. Headliner is, seen better days. Let's move to the other side. Boy, moving to the passenger side rear, and I see something that's really got me scared. Have you ever seen an air filter that looked that bad before? I mean, the stuff is just falling out of it. I'm assuming that's dirt, silt or something. Oh no, that's not. That's foam. That's just foam that's degraded after some time sitting and all dried out. So that was like a pre-filter or something. So boy, I was thinking that the engine was just dusted, which is just what happens when you get a bunch of dirt inside the engine, and it's going to need a rebuild because it gets in your cylinders, and it just, it's, dirt's an abrasive, and it just scores your cylinder wall. So hopefully that is not as bad as it seems initially. So let's see, we got some other parts back here. I see a caster, I see a wheel cylinder, another wheel cylinder, a U-joint. Again, hodgepodge of stuff. Moving up to the front, and let's see what we've got here. Well, that's an interesting hammer. I hope they weren't using that to work on the vehicle with. Well, and looking here, we got a starter. I'm assuming that's the one for the vehicle. It looks right. So that may be a clue as to one of the things that had it off the road, although a starter is not that difficult to replace. So that normally wouldn't have something sitting up just because it needed a starter. Okay, folks, so our biggest issue obviously is that the engine is said to be seized, right? So let's do some basic investigation up top and see if we can figure anything out. Okay, that's good news. The oil is not milky, the level is good, and doesn't smell like there's a bunch of diesel in there either. Okay, we may have a problem. The radiator is bone dry. At least I can't see any water. And the radiator hoses are hooked up, so it's not like one of the lower radiator hoses off and all the coolant drained out. So if a vehicle's got a seized engine and you've got no water in the radiator, I hope that doesn't mean that the engine is not actually seized, but it's blown, as in a connecting rod kicked out the side of the block, perforated the water jacket, and all of the coolant drained out. So it may be time to get underneath the vehicle and see if we've got an intact engine block. Okay, time to play good news, bad news. The good news is that we don't appear to have a rod that's kicked out the side of the block. The bad news is that we're missing at least one freeze plug, and I still got to check the other side of the engine. So that hole right there is where there should have been a freeze plug. And not only are we missing a freeze plug, but there's some nastiness that is in there that looks like somebody may have mixed the wrong types of coolant. If you mix incompatible coolants, it turns kind of muddy. So I wonder if that's what happened. All right, well, let's check out the other side of the engine. Okay, more news. I don't know if it's good or bad at this point. We're on the passenger side of the engine at the bottom looking up. And what I've got the camera focused on is a sort of a half-ass repair for a freeze plug. That is a expanding rubber plug that is a temporary fix at best when you can't pull the engine out, don't want to pull the engine out, can't afford to pull the engine out to do it right. So we're missing at least two freeze plugs, and it certainly looks like the engine needs to come out. And there's also that nastiness that's in there that even if we could get plugs in it, you know, how are we going to flush all that stuff out? So again, looks like it's time to pull an engine, and I guess that's all right. Now, as far as the engine being seized, I don't see any real need to worry about that right now. I mean, it is what it is. If it's seized, the engine is coming out, and if it's not seized, the engine's coming out. So once it's out, we'll take a look and figure it out from there. Hey, you know, one thing I forgot to tell you all about was the backstory on the vehicle. I got too excited about sort of getting into it and figuring out what we were going to do next, that I neglected to do that. So what I know about it, it sat in a field for about 15 years. If you can see the windshield from here, the last inspection expired in February of 2008. So it was last inspected, sometime in February of 2007. So I'm not going to do public math here, but that sounds like about 15 years to me, since it's 2022 right now. So, so it's been off the road for a while. The guy that I bought it from had pulled it out of the field where it had been sitting forever. And the prior owner apparently told him, hey, ran when parked. Yeah, I know, we've all heard that before, haven't we? Almost never true, seems like. So, but he did a few things to the vehicle. I'm not quite sure what. Obviously, he wasn't able to get it going. I suspect he's the one who pulled the starter off, and he probably pulled the injectors out. And he's the one who told me that the engine was seized. And I didn't get into exactly how he determined that it was seized. So anyway, so that's the backstory on the vehicle. I don't have a huge amount of history on it, but I mean, we'll figure this stuff out on the way, won't we? All right, thanks. Hey folks, welcome to day 2. Before I forget, can you please do me a favor? That's if there's anybody out there watching besides my sisters and my wife, please hit the like button and the subscribe button. Thanks. Hey folks, we made some progress, but it's been really slow going. I mean, this truck is an 87, and it's been sitting out in the weather for the last 15 years. It's perhaps never been garaged in its life, so there's a lot of rust on all the fasteners. I've been using Croyle. Yeah, this stuff here. I've been using it for several years, and when I run out of that, I usually run 50-50, acetone and ATF. All right, that works really well as well. Not a big fan of the other products out there. So a few comments. So I dropped the lower radiator hose, and what came out but straight water. Maybe that's why the freeze plugs popped out. So, and it wasn't a lot of water in there. I mean, the radiator wasn't full by any stretch, you know, maybe a quart of water. We also found water in the oil pan. So, yeah, I drained the oil, and, you know, that's the last thing that you want to see when you drain your oil. You know, the first thing that comes out is, it looked like about 2 cups of water. That's not a good thing. But on the bright side, I didn't see any big chunks of metal in there, so maybe the engine is still sound internally, but we'll find out soon enough. All right, I think it's time to take the radiator out. Oh man, this thing is heavy. Oh yeah, all right. Yep, more rusty water. Okay, making slow progress. And trying to get the core support out now. And the bolts that hold it to the frame at the bottom are typically pretty rusty, and these are typical. I was surprised that I was able to get one out without too much trouble, but the other one's fighting me, so I got a little something for that. All right, folks, I think the core support's ready to come out. Okay, I think that's enough for today. It's starting to get dark, and I've got a Cerveza in my immediate future. Signing off. Hey folks, so it's the weekend, and I've managed to make a little bit of progress after work in getting some more of the accessories off the engine to get it ready to pull. The problem is that today it's been raining on and off, and so right now there's a break in the weather, so I'm going to try to get this engine out today, again, if the weather holds. All right, stay tuned. Let's just look at a few things here before we pull the engine out. First, I want to point out to you where the core support was, and that hole's not supposed to look like that. All right, so I'm going to have to clean that up and maybe cut out the rusty metal here and weld in a big fat washer. All right, of course the other side is about the same, not quite as bad. Okay, moving on here, you can see I got the water pump off. The power steering pump is unbolted, and I like to get as much off of the engine as I can before I pull it. That's just less stuff to get hung up. I got the oil filter off as well. Again, that's something that may hang up on the engine cross member. Now, another thing too is the engine has lift hooks on it. Now, this had 3 on it, so let's see. Yeah, there's one back here as well. So that's what I'm going to hook the chain to. I had to source an extra one just so I can use 4 points if I get the chain set up correctly. So, okay, so motor mount bolts need to come out. There they are there. The driver's side is a little harder to get to because you've got the oil cooler. It's in the way, so that's the oil cooler right here. But I think we can get at it. So time to get her done. All right, it's hooked up and ready. So let's see if it'll come out. All right, and she's out. Now to get her on the engine stand. Well, the intake's off, and I got a little bit of a mess to clean up, courtesy of a mouse or a squirrel or rat or something that was living in there. Not uncommon to see that. It seems to be a favorite nesting place for little furry critters. All right, it's time for the big reveal. Let's see if these cylinders are just caked with rust. All right, well, that looks like a cylinder full of water there, and the other ones don't look too awful bad. Yeah, there's some rust in there, that's for sure. Although this doesn't seem to be 100% water. It's almost like somebody put some oil down in there as well. You know what, the ridge doesn't seem to be too bad on this cylinder. That's a shame because it's definitely going to need an overbore considering what this one looks like. I mean, if it's really bad, it might even need a sleeve. But I can feel a lot of debris down in there with my hand, so this thing was not going to turn easily. And you can see we've got some rust in here too. That's, yeah. That's pretty nasty. So, rust looks fine here, looks pretty good here, and lots of rust here in the back. All right, let's go ahead and get the other one off. I've already got all the head bolts undone. One more head bolt. Come on, Scott. Now it should come. There it goes. Wow, this may be worse back here. I've got the back two cylinders with water and rust. The front two don't look bad. Okay folks, let's take a closer look and see what we've got. So on the bright side, the valley looks pretty good. The lifters look fine. There's not a whole lot of sludge in there. But now starting off on the passenger side of the engine, there's where we get some ugliness. This is the worst cylinder right here, and there is a fair amount of rust and pitting, and that cylinder may end up needing a sleeve. Moving on to the next one, the other three cylinders on this side aren't too bad. Now you can see what I was talking about there, about the nastiness is down in the water jacket. Again, I think that's a result of mixing the wrong two flavors of antifreeze. And of course, here we go, looking at freeze plugs or lack thereof. This guy's just hanging there, so, well, there we go. Oh, yeah, that's lovely. So, okay, let's check out the driver's side of the engine. Looking up front, again, this thing really needs to be boiled out to get all that stuff out of the water jacket. Okay, the rearmost cylinder, actually on this side, it was pretty good. It's the next one up that's got some rust, as you can see down there at the bottom. Now, that I don't think would need a sleeve, but it definitely would need to be overboard. And the front two cylinders don't look too bad. Now, on the bright side, if you look at the pistons, they appear to be standard bore. So when you get a piston that's oversized, usually that's stamped right on the top of it, you know, 020, 030, 040 or whatever. So that's the good news, is that this block appears to be standard and it's likely never been rebuilt. So it should be able to take a decent amount of overbore. And again, the 6.9 liter has thicker cylinder walls than the 7.3. So that's more good news. Hey folks, one thing I forgot to mention. Where did I get the name The Bulletproof Garage? Well, rest assured, the garage is not bulletproof, nor am I for that matter, all right? So there's no literal meaning. Bulletproof is just a nickname that I picked up decades ago. It's been so long that the facts in question are pretty fuzzy, but I'm pretty sure tequila was involved, all right? So since then, Bulletproof has been my username on various social media sites. So the Bulletproof Garage seems sort of natural, all right? Hey folks, here's where we are with the engine. I went ahead and removed the camshaft and the lifters. I got the balancer off, I removed the front cover, and then I rotated the engine, as you can see, to where one bank of cylinders is pointing straight up. And from there, I hit the cylinders with a shot of Croil, and then I poured Marvel Mystery Oil into the cylinders to where it covered each of the pistons. And as you can see, the Marvel Mystery Oil in the center two cylinders seeped past the rings, but in the rearmost cylinder and the cylinder on the front, it has not. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to drain the Marvel Mystery Oil out of those two cylinders, and then I'm going to rotate the engine to where the other bank of cylinders is facing up. And then we're going to fill those with Croil, and then we're going to go ahead and try to turn it. Now, is this necessary at this point? No, it's not. But it's more of an experiment just to see if we had tried to free the engine up using Croil and Marvel Mystery Oil, would that have been something that would have worked? Okay, obviously, since the freeze plugs needed to be replaced, the engine had to come out, but I think it's still instructive, or at least interesting, to see what would have happened had we tried to free it up. All right, let's go ahead and rotate the engine first. All right, that's about right. First step, shot of Croil. And then Marvel Mystery Oil. I've been using this stuff for years. Frankly, it's never let me down. So let's see if it'll work this time. Again, I'm just putting enough in to cover the tops of the pistons. One thing I forgot to mention, now I've already put Marvel Mystery Oil and Croil into this bank of cylinders and let it sit overnight, and 2 of the cylinders we had no movement, so I'm ready. Normally I would let it sit for a while, 24 hours, even longer, but right now I'm ready to go ahead and see if we can get the crank moving just a little bit, get the pistons moving just a little bit, and then once they start moving, it should be fairly easy to free up. All right, right now I'm still just tightening the bolt. I'm not getting any movement. Still nothing. Try the other way. Nothing yet. All right, let's see if I can move it some with the impact. Folks, I don't think it's moving. I mean, we could keep on going here. You know, sometimes people take days, even longer, to free up an engine. And if you're going, trying each day to move it just a little bit clockwise and counterclockwise, sometimes it'll free up, but this isn't coming easily. And I'm worried about tearing up the threads in the crank or breaking off the balancer bolt inside the snout of the crank. So I think we're going to hold what we got. Hey folks, as we're finishing up episode number 1, one thing that should be painfully obvious to everyone out there is the budget is out the window, right? So we started off with something we thought we might be able to get running and driving and back on the road on a reasonable budget, all right? Now, with the engine being seized and the freeze plugs being missing in action, that went out the window. So here we are with a 6.9 out of the truck. Now, I'm pretty sure that's going to be rebuildable, right? So should we rebuild the 6.9? All right? Should we just buy a running 7.3 IDI or 6.9 IDI? That's an option as well, okay? Or should we build a 7.3? Maybe a 7.3 IDI turbo. You know, some of y'all are going to say, well, why not put a Power Stroke in it? My response, I've already had a Power Stroke, and I'd really like to stick with an IDI for this project. Now, some folks might say, well, why don't you just put a 460 in it? They're a dime a dozen. Well, 460s are easy to come by, and I've had 460 powered F350s before. That's a great engine, but let's stick with diesel on this. And I know what some of y'all are thinking. Hey, a match made in heaven, a Dodge Cummins, and a Ford F350. I got to tell you folks, I really don't like crossbreeding. I never have, all right? Having said that, I would consider putting a Cummins in it, but I'm just hesitant to go down that road. I would like to keep it all Ford, all right? But please post your comments about what you think we should do with the engine. And thanks in advance for those of you who took the time to post a comment. All right, folks. So winding down, again, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And we'll see you next time on the Bulletproof Garage.